You're listening to The Voluntary Life, where you can hear ideas for finding freedom in an unfree world. Visit thevoluntarylife.com to connect with the show and hear all past episodes. Here's your host, Jake.
Hi everyone, it's Jake here. Welcome to The Voluntary Life. In this episode, I'm sharing with you a chapter from the audiobook of my book, Becoming an Entrepreneur. This book is a condensed version of everything I know about entrepreneurship, and the chapter that I'm sharing with you is called Learn by Selling. If you like the sound of this chapter, you can get hold of Becoming an Entrepreneur on Amazon as an ebook and paperback, and also on Audible as an audiobook, and I'll put links in the show notes. You can also find links on my website. Before I play you this chapter, I just want to say a big thank you to my new patron on Patreon, Lucio DM, or Lucio, and I would also like to thank my new backer on bitbacker.io, and that is Lumore. If you would like to support The Voluntary Life, you can do so by becoming a patron on Patreon. And as a patron, you get access to bonus episodes and many other rewards. And if you prefer an alternative to Patreon, you can become a backer on Bitbacker and support me in cryptocurrency. I'll put links for both of those platforms in the show notes. And I should also mention that if you enjoy listening to this chapter of the book, one way of getting hold of the book is by supporting me on Patreon. Depending on which level of support you go for, you can get hold of the ebook or also the audiobook, which are available at different tiers of support on Patreon. And they will soon be available for different tiers on Bitbacker too. So without further delay, here's a chapter from my book, Becoming an Entrepreneur. Chapter 4. Learn by Selling. I have never worked a day in my life without selling. If I believe in something, I sell it, and I sell it hard. Estee Lauder. Selling is the aspect of entrepreneurship that most strongly contradicts our conditioning. We've been trained to believe that we're not supposed to speak about our positive qualities. We've also been taught that we're not supposed to talk plainly about money. Yet, in order to sell, you have to present the positive qualities of something that you've made and ask directly for money. I found this very uncomfortable at first. I felt vulnerable when I started to sell. I had to be upfront about why I thought that hiring my business would be the best choice for potential clients. I knew I was opening myself up to criticism by directly expressing my enthusiasm and positivity about the business. I found that scary. I also felt vulnerable about asking to get paid in return for our services. I worried that new contacts would dislike me for bringing money into the relationship. I worried that I'd make a fool of myself, especially if I misjudged the pricing. Most of all, I worried about being rejected, since selling involves so much rejection. I avoided selling in order to avoid the discomfort that it provoked in me. I could always find seemingly useful things to do instead. You may also find it very uncomfortable to get out there and sell if it directly contradicts deep-seated messages that you've learned. Many people prefer the comfort of being an employee and getting a paycheck just so they don't have to face the psychological challenge of selling. Selling makes everyone feel vulnerable, but it gets easier the more you do it. In this chapter, I will highlight some of the most prevalent conditioning against selling and suggest ways to overcome it. I will explain why selling is so important to your business, because it is how you learn what works as an entrepreneur. Principled and unprincipled selling. Every culture has prejudices about selling. The worst prejudice is the idea that selling is all about bullying and manipulation. Mainstream movies and novels portray salespeople as pushy and unprincipled. The unspoken assumption behind this cultural prejudice is that all salespeople are unprincipled. Of course, this is not true. There are principled salespeople and unprincipled salespeople. When salespeople act in an unprincipled way, they are no longer selling, they're doing something else, such as defrauding. For example, there are salespeople who lie about the benefits of a product in an attempt to persuade you to buy it. I would call that fraud, not selling. It is also true that some salespeople use manipulative tactics to try to close a sale. However, that behavior is not inherent in selling. Some people try to use psychological manipulation to get dates. But that doesn't mean that dating itself is about manipulation. The same applies to selling. Principled selling is rooted in principled negotiation. Negotiation does not have to be a battle of wills. It can be a collaborative search for win-win outcomes using objective means. Principled negotiation is a fundamental skill for entrepreneurs that most parents don't teach their kids and most schools and universities ignore. I didn't even know there was a body of knowledge about negotiation from which I could learn. Getting to Yes by Fisher and Ury is widely considered the best book on negotiation. It's certainly the best thing that I've read on the topic. It provides a systematic and principled approach to negotiating win-win outcomes. I adopted Fisher and Ury's approach completely, which made both my negotiation and my selling far more effective. Principled selling is simply persuasion. Nobody has to buy anything from a seller. The seller has to convince the buyer of the benefits. If a buyer parts with their money, it's because they value whatever benefits they receive more highly than the money they give away. By definition, a sale is always voluntary, so there is nothing morally wrong with it. Overcoming ignorance about selling. I was ignorant about selling when I started my business. I had not taken an active sales role in previous jobs, so I had very little sales experience. In school and college, I learned nothing whatsoever about selling, despite the fact that it is a crucial life skill. Teachers are insulated from the need to sell. Consequently, they're generally ignorant about selling and tend to be prejudiced against it. Selling was the last thing that I thought about or wanted to do. My interest lay in developing the technology of our product. I know many people who had a similar experience. When you get going, you want to create your awesome new gadget or service. It's fun and interesting. You're doing something new. It's not stressful because it's entirely under your control. But actually, these activities are often a convenient distraction for what you really need to be doing, which is selling. As soon as you become an entrepreneur, you're in the selling business. Entrepreneurship is all about getting agreements and persuading people of the benefits of a particular action. The action might be to buy your product, use your service, give you a referral, fund your business, come and work for you, or set up an affiliate link with you. All of these agreements are dependent on your selling skills. It's important to learn to find satisfaction and fulfillment through selling as quickly as possible, because if there's no selling, then there's no business, and you'll have to pack up and go home. When I came to understand selling in a systematic way, it enabled me to identify the right activities that I could do to help improve the sales process and shape my business. That felt great and gave me a real sense of satisfaction. Selling is something that you can break down and understand as a process of stages, each with its own measurable characteristics. I encourage you to read everything that you can about selling and get beyond the amateur phase as quickly as you can. I personally found it helpful to read the most unapologetic and assertive books on selling that I could find, the most useful of which for me was How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins. Selling is a numbers game. In the beginning, selling can seem like a painful process of repeated rejection. It can be frustrating when you face a lot of indifference. Increasing sales can be a slow process. Everybody is busy. Customers don't think that they require what you are selling. They may not immediately react to your great offering with anything like the enthusiasm that you hope for. I avoided focusing on selling at first because receiving these kinds of responses made me feel uncomfortable. However, when you start to get a handle on it, you realize that selling is just a numbers game. It is true that when you try to make sales, many people will turn your offer down. However, as long as you approach the process strategically, every sales attempt will give you useful information. By adjusting both your offering and your sales pitch in light of each new bit of information, you get better and better at improving your success ratio. Selling teaches you resilience because, as with everything in business, you experience so much failure. Attempting sales and failing teaches you to keep trying. You learn to focus on the results as a whole, not on the outcome of an individual sale. When you accept that it's a numbers game, rejection becomes less significant and you don't take it personally because you realize that it doesn't matter if a particular customer doesn't buy. It's just part of the process. Other customers will buy. If you qualify your sales prospects and identify benefits for customers, then selling becomes more about building relationships. Selling is about nurturing relationships. Many people think that in order to sell, you have to be brash and pushy. Selling does teach you assertiveness, but it also teaches you humility. It teaches you not to feel entitled to anyone else's time, attention, or money. It teaches you the value of empathy and reciprocity. As with all relationships, you need to empathize with your customers if you want to nurture your relationships with them. Empathy comes from working to understand their needs so that you can identify ways to provide value to them. There's no guarantee that customers will be interested in the value that you believe you can provide. Nurturing your relationships with customers is vital to the growth of your business because the majority of your sales are likely to come in the form of repeat business from those existing customers. Existing customers are the engine of your growth. You also get referrals from them, whereby existing customers refer new customers to your product or service by recommending it to them. I wasn't familiar with this concept when I started my business, but it's one of the most important ways to grow sales. Partner and affiliate relationships are also amazing drivers of growth. Partnering involves identifying other people who sell a complementary product and linking with them to provide a joint offering that is even more beneficial to your customer than either product by itself. Alternatively, you can sometimes piggyback on a partner's sales process by adding your product or service to what they are already selling. For example, I developed a partnering scheme to link up with architectural firms. Our clients were retail development companies who bought pedestrian movement consulting from us because they wanted to ensure that their new shopping malls would have good shopper flows on all levels. We realized that architects could use our services on the retail projects that they were designing. Although the developers paid our bills, the architects were the ones who helped us get the sale. Most of the time, selling is about looking after relationships. Consequently, any fears that you may have about selling may not even be appropriate to the reality of what you'll end up doing. It really pays off to get into selling right away. It's not only super important, it's also incredibly interesting and rewarding, and a huge amount of personal growth is involved. You will learn about both yourself and about negotiation. Selling may be scary, but the fear signifies a massive potential for personal growth. Creating your own opportunities. I started out thinking that I would sell when an obvious opportunity arose. However, selling opportunities very rarely arise on their own. They don't happen unless you dedicate the time to creating them. To succeed, I had to set aside significant chunks of time to focus exclusively on new business generation. I blocked out my calendar every Tuesday and devoted that day entirely to generating new sales leads. That worked for me as I could get into the mindset and just sell all day. I would follow up and respond to emails during the rest of the week, but I devoted one entire day each week to generating new business. It was easier for me to get into the zone for a day, but other people find it helpful to spend a couple of hours selling every morning. They don't look at emails, they close their door and make themselves otherwise unavailable. Whatever time you prefer, I suggest you devote a bare minimum of 1.5 hours a day or 1 day a week solely to new business generation. However, dedicating time and resources to selling is only going to help if your selling is effective. In order to be successful, you need systems to track which sales efforts are working and which are not. This information, or business intelligence, allows you to course correct and improve your sales. How to acquire this information is the subject of the next chapter. The necessity of selling is difficult, but also wonderfully purifying for your business. It casts out self-preoccupations and ensures that your venture does things that are truly valuable to others. In this way, it brings you closer to fulfilling your own potential. Believe it or not, when you come to see selling in this way, it becomes fun. Selling shapes your business. Selling is of paramount importance, not simply because it is how you get money into your business, although the revenue is vital too, of course. The real value of selling is that it is a learning mechanism. The best guide to whether your business is on track is whether your customers will pay for your product or service. Payment from your customers does not have to be only in the form of money. It could also be in the form of referrals, recommendations, or useful feedback about your product. The key is that your customers signal their recognition and appreciation through some form of reciprocation. That means paying you for your product or service. Payment is the feedback that you need in order to course correct and guide you in your business. Payment from a customer is like a message that says, "What you do improves my life, so I'm willing to show my appreciation by giving something back." This is the most useful information anyone can give you about where to take your business. For this reason, it's vital to start selling as quickly as possible. You probably want to improve your product, develop your marketing materials, and do any number of other important things before you start selling. However, the sooner you sell something to somebody, the sooner you will actually learn whether or not your offering improves the lives of your customers and how it could do so more effectively. This is also how you learn what you need to change about your business in order to better help your customers. Many entrepreneurs emphasize the importance of beginning to sell as soon as possible. The central idea of the lean startup movement is to treat your business development as a process of validated learning about which product developments work. Selling is the vehicle for this learning, and your validation comes in the way that your customers respond to your sales attempts. The idea is to develop a minimum viable product, which is the simplest version of your offer that you can get to market as quickly as possible. You race to selling because it provides the best feasibility test of any business idea. Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, suggests that entrepreneurs should focus all their efforts on getting to the first potential failure point as quickly as possible so that they can test the viability of their venture before putting more effort into it. This is the pass or fail point. Can you make something that will actually sell? Selling fundamentally shaped my business. When I started Intelligent Space, I wanted to develop an application service provision business model, or ASP, whereby we would provide online software that our clients could use for a specialist type of computer simulation. This system would have been very expensive to develop and would have taken a lot of time to implement. We began by selling consultancy services with the aim of financing the development of our application service from revenue. Once we started selling to customers, we soon learned that they did not want an application service. Our clients wanted us to help them get better results as architects, engineers, and shopping center developers. They didn't want us to help them become pedestrian movement experts. They wanted us to take the responsibility for telling them how well their design would work for pedestrian flow and how they could make it better. Our clients made it clear through what they were willing to pay for that they wanted an answer handed to them. They wanted that answer in a form that was easy to understand, such as an animation of pedestrians walking around their shopping mall. They also wanted someone there in important meetings with them to tackle any difficult questions about the pedestrian model. In short, they wanted us to do consultancy work, which was not what I originally wanted to do. That was how the process of selling influenced the evolution of our business model. We changed the goal of our business model 2 years after founding. We dropped our plans to sell software and deliberately focused on developing a consultancy service. In this way, we allowed ourselves to be influenced by what our customers were willing to pay for. Here are the most important points to remember about selling. 1. The main value of selling is that it is a learning process. It shapes your business by providing you with essential feedback about what works. 2. Every entrepreneur needs this learning process in order to succeed, so it's vital to start selling as soon as possible and devote significant time to it on an ongoing basis. 3. Ignorance and prejudice surround the act of selling, but the reality is that principled selling is a mutually beneficial activity that nurtures relationships. Entrepreneurship is fundamentally a process of experimental learning through selling. The market is an evolutionary process that develops by trial and error, with businesses starting, experimenting, evolving, and changing. In the same way, your business will be a trial and error machine. You can't know in advance what you might offer that will really evoke enthusiasm in your customers, but you can make judgment calls and you can experiment. To be effective, any experiment requires feedback from your customers. The best way to get feedback is to try to sell.
Thank you for listening to The Voluntary Life. If you like this podcast, please show your support by becoming a patron of The Voluntary Life on Patreon. Your support will help to grow and improve the show, and you'll get access to a treasure trove of rewards, including bonus episodes. Visit thevoluntarylife.com to learn more.